Hey guys, it's the Norwegian guy here back at again. I'm your host, Mr. Daniel, and today I decided I want to do something a little different as usual because this channel it kind of does everything a little bit here, a little bit there. So today I figured I want to talk about an album that I don't see a lot of people really talk about because it's not exactly necessarily the best. Uh, so we might as well get into this. So this album was released back in 1984. Okay, and that of course is the released via Epic Records, and that of course is the Jacksons' Victory. Victory. Although I don't consider this album as much of a victory as much as I look at this gatefold here. I don't consider this as much of a victory as much as a defeat. It really is. Okay, so before I get into this, so what exactly is the history with this album? Well, this album, as just mentioned, was released, of course, back in 1984 and would be the last studio album of the Jacksons with Michael before he would leave to pursue his own solo career later on. But yeah, this album, I don't see a lot of people talk about it because it's not very good. Okay, to contextualize exactly what happened here. So back early on, the Jacksons or the Jackson 5 used to be kind of a poppy, kind of funky, disco-y. Yeah, it basically was kind of a disco band with funk elements, with elements of pop later on. Uh, but as things would end up coming to show was of course the fact that of course Michael released a little album called Thriller between Triumph and this one we're talking about here today, Victory. Uh, and and of course Michael didn't go on a promotional tour to support the album because he somehow got roped back into say, you know what, we stick with your brothers, we'll put together an album and then you guys can go out to tour that album, although they didn't play any of it as far as I know. Most of the set list for the Victory tour was mostly just songs from Michael Jackson's own solo career, so it was kind of a weird mashup. And as I just mentioned, most of this band's discography used to consist of mostly kind of funky pop songs, or at least pop songs with funk and R&B elements to it. This is straight up AOR 80s pop, and of course most of the songs usually were predominantly sung by Michael with maybe co-lead vocals or backing vocals by some of the his other brothers. This one, I think he only does sing like maybe two, maybe three songs, uh, and it's not exactly very good. But the track listing here is not in order, so I just gotta pull out the vinyl here if I can get it out. And of course we got our lovely brothers here. So of course the album starts off, I know this album starts off with Torture, and boy are we in for some torture right here. It's not exactly, it's a song, it's kind of cool to hear Jermaine back with his brothers after being gone since 1975, and to hear him sing co-lead vocals with Michael, it's a cool thing to hear again. But the song itself is not very good. It's very dull, and it's, like I said, very AOR. And I'm just gonna say this right now so I can avoid repeating myself. All the songs are pretty bland. Most of them. There are maybe a couple of tracks that I actually kind of find fairly decent, but most of all, this is not very good. like I said, it starts off with torture, and it's kind of annoying for me. The second track is Wait, which is a song by Jackie, and it's kind of a guilty pleasure for me, but it's occasionally when I hear it, but it's also one of those that are fairly forgettable. And then of course you got One More Chance, which is sung by Randy. Doesn't really stick with you either. Then of course is I think one of the longest tracks on the album, which is Be Not Always, which is a decent ballad, I guess. I mean, it got a pretty decent vocal performance by Michael, but overall, yeah, it's not one of the strongest tracks either. Uh, then, of course, when you flip the vinyl over, you of course get the song State of Shock, which I think is pretty cool. It's kind of rocking. And of course, Michael sings co-lead vocals with Mick Jagger from the Rolling Stones, which is pretty cool. Although there is an alternate version where Michael sings along, does the song with Freddie Mercury from Queen. So you have two different versions. I personally kind of like the Mick Jagger one a little more, but the Freddie Mercury one, not exactly a bad track, I think. Uh, then of course we get We Can't Change the World, which again, pretty bland, pretty boring. Uh, The Hurt, I don't even remember that one. Body, which is the closing track on this. Yeah, we I almost keep it. That's kind of sort of the thing. This album is a fairly bland, fairly forgettable one, and as far as an album goes, to be the closing album with Michael, who were the biggest pop sensation on the planet at the time, and still remains one of the biggest musical icons to this day. It's kind of disappointing to have an album where he goes out on something like this. I mean, if I had to rate this album, I would probably give it a 1.5 out of 5. It's not a good album, and I wouldn't exactly recommend anyone listening to it if you haven't already heard most of the discography from the Jacksons or the Jackson 5, or well, the Jackson 5, Jacksons, and Michael's solo work. Then maybe you can consider this just to kind of close things out, but I otherwise don't really bother with it. So with that, I'm just gonna head out, and make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Make sure that you click the notification button, and make sure to share this video, because we need to get more people on this channel, because you know what? The more the merrier.